Everybody, welcome to the press. Welcome to a new week, post-PGA Championship week. We go down to Texas for the Charles Schwab Challenge at Colonial. I'm Ryan Ballinger. Great to have you with us for the first show of the week. We're going to go over kind of the general gist of the tournament for this week. Again, Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, Texas. We'll go over our model for the week. We'll go over some opening lines, take your questions if you've got them, and we'll put it all together a first show of the week. We'll have a second show of the week. Tomorrow we'll get a little bit more in-depth in this tournament. A little bit more stuff around first-round leaders, some higher-level indicators, stuff like that, maybe a little bit geekier version of the show, but one I kind of like the most. And then we've got a pretty good slate this week of tournaments. So we've got the LPGA back this week. We've got the Korn Ferry Tour in action. We've got the Champions Tour in my neck of the woods with a major championship, the Senior PGA at Congressional. We've got the Soudal Open in Belgium this week. So we've got a lot to get to over the course of the week, but let's focus on our first show about Charles Schwab Challenge. Again, played at Colonial Country Club, a Perry Maxwell masterpiece. Gil Hansen Company came in and redid this. I think it unveiled last year, but came in and redid it. 1941 opener, also known as Hogan's Alley, also known as Hogan's Alley out at Riviera for a different reason, but this is the original Hogan's Alley. Par 70 golf course, 7,289 yards. Like one of the last times we were in the state of Texas, $9.5 million purse, $1.71 million to the winner, 500 FedEx Cup points to the champion, just a general tournament primer. Let's take a look at what you're going to see is very obvious from the betting odds, what this field is and what it isn't. So, this is about 19 or 20 of the world top 50, but most of the top 10 is not playing in this tournament. Your top 10 guy is Scotty Scheffler. He's the world number one. He's a Texan. He's the new major champion. He's the three-time major winner. He is the draw this week, right? Like, he is clearly the draw. He is the biggest reason to come and watch this tournament this weekend, and he is priced like it, right? Plus 250 to win is Tiger-esque in terms of his number. He got it down to like 450, 400 last week at Quail Hollow, having won in his prior start by 8 shots, tying the PGA Tour 72-hole aggregate scoring record, skipping the Truist, which turned out to be a really smart move on his part, I guess, then playing at Quail Hollow, a place that he really had never played in a stroke play capacity. He played in the President's Cup, but hadn't played it in an individual tournament. Winds up figuring out a way to win, frankly, without his best stuff, right? And we're going to talk about that in a minute, but winds up winning a third major championship, a second tournament in a row, and now he has been reinstalled as the guy that was Scotty Scheffler last year. I'm not saying he's going to win 9 times in the calendar year, but he is being priced like a guy who has won 11 times in the last 17 months. So know that going in, that if you were going to try to make a play this week, the most likely outcome, if you were thinking about it, is that Scotty Scheffler's going to run away with this thing because he won last week with his B stuff against some of the best his generation has to offer, and he doesn't have quite that same challenge this week. So if you feel like you agree with me and that Scotty Scheffler is poised to win a third straight tournament, which he may or may not, he could be tired, he could be not disinterested, but not as interested, let's put it that way, in playing Colonial after a long week. There are a lot of reasons why he might not perform as well as he did to win the Wanamaker. But there's also every reason to believe that he will perform just as well as he always does, and that he can win without his best stuff. And that's why he's plus 250. So if everything that we talk about for the rest of the way, entertain the possibility of a market without, right? And I think you've got to start thinking about that. We talked about it at the Masters. We talked about market without Rory and Scotty. That paid off. We talked about it here last week. Market with Rory and Scotty excluded and Bryson excluded. That paid off. Maybe that's where we are. But you're going to get worse prices. So if you're willing to take a little chance that the world's best player by far and away does not win this week because he's tired, disinterested, or whatever, then you go with these betting odds. Otherwise, start thinking market without. These are from an offshore book. They were taken earlier in the day. First odds I saw on the board. So we've got Scotty Scheffler plus 250, which is, again, Tiger-esque and insane and practically unbettable. Then you've got Daniel Berger, past champion here at 18-1. Tommy Fleetwood, who has never won in this country as an individual, 20-1. Jordan Spieth, 25-1. First kind of fawning over him to complete the career Grand Slam in a number of years of the PGA Championship because people remembered it since Rory McIlroy did it, and that did not go very well. Hideki Matsuyama, Matt McNeely, 28-1 each. I think you can find Matt McNeely is an interesting price this week. Aaron Rye, 30-1. JT Poston, 33-1, who I think is worth a play. Harris English is worth a play at 35-1. Again, one of the T2 guys in the end who finished really early and it turned out to hold up. Siwoo Kim, 35-1, I think is worth a play. Again, kind of finished with a flourish, like he cared, like it mattered, like he wanted to do something pretty cool here. So I think that's worth a look. JJ Spawn had a nice little flurry there over the weekend, 40-1. Seems to kind of like venues like this. I know he's made his breakthrough win in the state of Texas on a very different golf course in San Antonio, but that's worth considering. Bobby Mack is not quite the same player he was last year, but 40-1. Ben Griffin had a really nice run, 50-1. Davis Riley obviously had a really nice run at the PGA Championship. He is a horse for course play. He is the defending champion. He's 50-1. Going to get a fair amount of action. I think Brian Harman's going to be overlooked, maybe to the detriment of a better, 50-1. Andrew Novak, long hitting guy, 55-1. He seems to have found a way to kind of make it work almost anywhere. So I don't want to necessarily disqualify him because this isn't really a bomber's paradise. But, you know, he's been playing really well this year. Akshay Bhatia, Harry Hall, Kashmir Keith Mitchell, Lucas Glover, Ryan Gerard, 60-1. I mean, there's a lot of value on this board after, 25-1. I think you can find a lot of guys that are worth betting in this space. And this is probably, if Scotty Scheffler is going to make a mistake, where the winner is going to come from, right? You can make the case about Harry Hall. He has contended here. It didn't win the year Emiliano Grillo won, and that was kind of a trip to the vomitorium for everybody involved in the final three guys that had a chance to win. No one really wanted to win it by the way that they played. Keith Mitchell has played very well. First round merchant, first round leader play. I feel like that's kind of unsaid now at this point that you expect it. Lucas Glover is a bit of a horse for course here. Ryan Gerard's been playing well everywhere. I mean, he showed out at the PGA Championship in his home state. So I think he takes a lot of confidence from being able to say to himself, hey, I can contend in a major championship. Maybe not all the way to the end, but I can contend for a good chunk of it. And I think that you have a lot of attractive options among this group of players on the board. That all said, let's get into the model for the week. Top 10 available for free. Everything else available. All 135 players in this field available to our members at golfnewsnet.com. $30 for 1 year. Or excuse me, $40 for 1 year, $70 for 2 years, $100 for 3 years over at golfnewsnet.com. Scotty Scheffler is number one. I'm not going to pull up the spreadsheet, but I run different equations and kind of put it all together, and that's how you get this model every week. He is almost 3 times as high as number 2 Aaron Rye in terms of points. Almost. It's close. So really the gulf between Scotty Scheffler and Aaron Rye is as big as Aaron Rye to about the 120th player in the field. Think about that for a minute. That's why he's plus 250. Then you got Tommy Fleetwood, Hideki Matsuyama, Keith Mitchell. Neil Shipley is 6th on this list. Again, we have kind of a lack of data about Neil Shipley, right? And he's been playing on the Korn Ferry Tour this year. He won on the Korn Ferry Tour this year. He won with a birdie on the 5th hole of the playoff. He is like 6th on the point standings. Be sure to check out the Road to French Lick show that we do about the Korn Ferry Tour. Neil's awesome. He's playing this week. He's got a great opportunity in front of him, but he ranks 6th not because he's the 6th best player in the field, but because his performance relative to his number of appearances is really good. JJ Spawn is 7, Brian Harman 8, Harris English 9, Siwoo Kim 10. So a lot of the guys we just mentioned that first slide that are 28-1 or deeper, they show up here on this list. I'm kind of surprised Maverick McNeely didn't show up here a little bit higher, but he's not quite as consistent as I would like at times. But I do think this is a golf course that suits him extremely well. If you want to try and draw some kind of parallel, I think you could see it to a couple of different places on the PGA Tour. To a degree, Harbor Town, not exactly. To a degree, Sea Island, I think that's a better, more apt comparison. So you can try to kind of make some assumptions, make some leaps in judgment based on that. I think that's fair to say. Let's talk about some horses for courses here. We'd mentioned a couple of them that didn't quite make the graphic, JT Poston and Lucas Glover. would qualify, I think, but I just didn't put their names on here. Jordan Spieth is your horse for course play, and that can't be a comforting thing, right? I mean, 3 top 15 finishes in the last 5 years in this tournament. He, like Scheffler, likes to play the Texas events, at least as many as he can. He's played this and had some success, right? I mean, that's a good record. He's also not playing great, but he's not playing bad. It's really hard. I mean, I find it very hard to bet Jordan Spieth for the experience, the ups and downs of it. I mean, that's not fun. It just doesn't feel like he's going to win anytime soon. I know he's won the last couple of years, but that doesn't feel like it's inevitable. You got Harris English, who obviously had himself a great Sunday and got a great payday out of the PGA Championship, even though he was no threat to win it. Already a winner, knows how to play this place. There's a lot of value, I think, in Harris English. Scotty Scheffler, come on, man. World number one, he likes everywhere. He's a horse for every course, except Pinehurst number 2, apparently. So you have to like his chances here. He makes every graphic. Davis Riley, winner here, top 5 here in 22. So he has done what you got to do here to be successful. And coming off of that big boost of a great weekend of the PGA Championship, what you don't know is if he's going to be really tired and exhausted from that, or he's going to feel buoyed by the fact that he gets to go to play a place he really clearly likes and will do well. Emiliano Grillo has won here, ended what was like a 7-year skid, winless skid on the PGA Tour here. Gary Woodland is also a horse for course play. I think he is an interesting consideration this week. Again, a lot of people tend to bet him when he gets around 75 to 100 to 1 or deeper if he's played somewhat well recently. That does tend to be a problem. It tends to be a trap a lot of people step into, but it's your money. Past champions, let's go over those real quick. Davis Riley defending, Emiliano Grillo, Sam Burns, who beat out Scotty Scheffler that year, Jason Kokrak, Daniel Berger in the COVID year, and then Kevin Na. So the COVID year, Daniel Berger won, and that was one of the, if not the first tournament back, one of the first tournaments back after the forced break for the world being infected by COVID-19. But it's interesting that this was one of those tournaments that when they plucked guys from LIV, they just happened to pick a couple of recent winners, Kevin Na and Jason Kokrak, and those guys ain't doing anything now. I mean, they're playing LIV, but what does that mean? All right, let's look a little bit more into the list of guys here this week. Again, mentioning Harry Hall, mentioning Lucas Glover, Ryan Gerard, wanted to kind of emphasize those guys. I think there's a lot of value there in them. Torbjorn Olesen, 60 to 1, I think is worth a consideration. I don't love it, but I think it's worth a consideration. People are going to probably fawn over Mac Hughes because he had a good run, losing in a playoff to Ryan Fox at Myrtle Beach, which I could see some parallels. I could see some parallels. The Dunes Club is obviously not Texas, but it is kind of tight landing areas. You got to be really smart playing your way around it. Mac Hughes has that. Alex Smalley's got that playing really well. Saw Christian Bezadenhoyt's name last weekend. Saw Eric Cole's name. There's Gary Woodland at 90 to 1. Almost interesting enough to wager. Ryohei Satsune, who had a role to play on Sunday, didn't play it as well as he would have hoped, but he did play it, and he was a part of the conversation for a while. 90 to 1's an interesting number. Matt McCarty's an interesting player. Really erratic, but it feels like he's starting to feel out the PGA Tour schedule a little bit to his benefit. Jacob Bridgman's shown some signs of being worth betting. Again, of the people on this list, looking at a little bit of a copy of the first slide to a degree. I mean, I'm a big fan of Ryan Gerard. I think he plays well everywhere. Keith Mitchell makes some sense to me. To a degree, Lucas Glover. And there are a lot of bad putters who have won here, but I just kind of have an aversion to betting him, I guess. I would go Davis Riley or Novak. And then, do you like an Eric Cole? I think you could see some value in that, right? He's not a particularly long hitter, just played well. He's a grinder. This guy likes to play a lot of tournaments, so playing the week after a major might kind of be repulsive to a lot of guys who will be just exhausted. I think he will thrive in it and really like it. Just something to think about there. Go a little bit deeper on the list. You've got Taylor Moore at 90 to 1. You've got Tom Kim at 90 to 1. Tom Kim made a really curious choice to go play Myrtle Beach opposite the Truist Championship, a guy who is in the top 50 in the world. And he is a very interesting character at this tournament. I don't love him, but He's interesting. Let's put it that way. Matt Wallace, 100-1, I think is kind of interesting. Emiliano Grillo, again, course favorite, 110-1. Lee Hodges, I would probably not go after here. Nico Echeverria, 110-1. Had a good start to the championship, but one thing I want to kind of put on record, and I think this is something that was pointed out by a couple of different folks, and I really appreciate it, so I want to kind of say it out loud so that we all remember it, which is for next year's PGA Championship, particularly thinking about live odds, Kerry Haig, who is the lead setup man for the PGA of America, goes out of his way to kind of make the course extremely fair and let it kind of firm up and get tougher on its own, and then introduce some tougher hole locations, not impossible ones, not controversial ones, but kind of lets the course get harder unto itself. And that weeds out players who on day one and even day two play their way into it because it plays more like a PGA Tour event. And then rounds 3 and 4 are the championship rounds kind of thing. You got to remember that. So we don't get fooled by the likes of Jonathan Vegas. Sorry, it didn't work out. Although he did stay in it for a very long time. We'll give him credit for that. But guys like that who show up on the leaderboard the first 2 days, you're like, this thing is going to be terrible. And then by the time we got to Sunday afternoon, it was everything you ever wanted, right? I mean, you had Scheffler, you had Bryson, you had Jon Rahm, you had a cast of characters that were filling in otherwise that are capable players, but they're not on the tip of your tongue. Turned out to work out great. So just remember that for next year, especially in the live market. Rico Hoey, I really like going into the week, didn't produce. Tom Hoagie, 110-1. There are going to be a lot of people. Shout out to Tweeth Mitchell who wants to bet Tom Hoagie this week. Please don't bet Tom Hoagie this week. That's a little too deep. People bet Jake Knapp last week, which I got the allure of, but that wasn't even close. Michael Thorpe Bjornsson, who I think is starting to kind of get it. Starting to get it, I think. Really starting to figure out how to play the schedule. Johnny Vegas also, both 125-1. Maybe Thor Bjornsson having obviously some Texas experience helps this week. I don't know how much specific to Colonial, but could be at least worth a consideration here this week. And then one more graphic of just kind of some longer shot guys. We didn't go through all 135 guys in this field. We don't have to be honest with you. Corey Pavin's playing this week, man. I know he's a past champion at Colonial. David Frost is playing this week. Michael Block is playing this week. We've got guys who could be playing and legitimately competing in Congressional in a senior major, and they have chosen not to play that because they're going to play at Colonial, an event where they will almost certainly miss the cut and have no chance of sniffing any portion of the $9.5 million purse, instead of going and playing in a senior major where they might have had a chance of sniffing the weekend and maybe even getting some money out of it. You tell me how that works. And no offense to Michael Block, unless maybe he will have 1,000 people following him at all times. He'll play the best golf ever, and he'll tie the 72-hole scoring record Scotty Scheffler set at the Nelson. I don't know, but I don't think you want to know what his betting odds are this week because the market does not think he's going to do that. Looking at guys who may have an outside chance of winning, I think Henrik Norlander and Sami Välimäki are always interesting plays to me. Välimäki, he's been playing pretty well overall. I like his game. 165-1 is worth an interesting sweat. The other guys on this list, Highsmith, Hubbard's kind of interesting. He has an okay record here. Patrick Rogers, nah. Bo Hostler, maybe, but no. Gooch, no. Max McGreevy, no. Neil Shipley's kind of interesting to me. 175-1. Isaiah Salinda's interesting to me at 185-1. He's had some good finishes on a couple of different courses. I don't know if this really fits his eye. But Neil Shipley certainly could be an interesting play at those numbers. Again, we've got a 135-player field. We stopped at about 85 players, right? So imagine what the other 50 players' odds are in this field. And then you start to realize why Scotty Scheffler is plus 250 on one end and why you've got guys that are 1,000-1 or worse on the other end. It's the bell curve is very weird this week. There are a lot of guys in the middle. And those guys are like 50, 90-1. And there are plenty of them. But the tail end of the curve is way longer than the bell. And obviously the front end of the bell curve is Scotty Scheffler and like 2 or 3 other people that kind of get on the rise before they get to the bell portion of it. This is a tough week to bet for that reason. Do you think Scotty Scheffler, the best player in the world, is not going to beat 134 other guys, plus whoever withdraws, Owen Brown's in the field this week, by the way. Oh, and I shared I have a funny story about Owen Brown. I'll talk about that another day. He's a great guy, but he should not be playing this week. That should not be happening. And so I think the reality has to set in that, 40, 50 guys shouldn't be here, but they're not going to play a part, right? So this is a 90-player tournament, and Scotty Scheffler beat 89 other guys and win a third tournament in a row? Absolutely. Would you feel like a fool if you won by 5 or 6 and you bet some of the guys that we talked about? Yeah, probably. But I feel like we're also entering that phase right now on the PGA Tour where there are 3 or 4 guys. Really, right now on the PGA Tour side, there are 2 guys in Rory and Scotty that are dominating. Right now, it's Scotty's turn to dominate. And pretty much every time he tees it up, you have to assume he's going to win. So you either play the market without or you hope he stumbles. This is an opportunity for him to stumble because he just won a major. He's probably exhausted. Got a lot on his mind. Maybe he just kind of checks out a little bit and takes a little victory lap. I don't think that's who he is. I think he's coming for names. I think he's coming for that plaid jacket. But if you're going to find some value, I think it's in the guys that like Matt McNeely of the 20s, start to get the guys in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. That's where your value is this week. And there is a fair amount of it, but you're going to have to take your chances on a couple of guys getting home and then see if that works out for you this week against the best player in the world. That's going to do it for us on the show. Thank you so much for watching or listening. The show's available as an audio-only podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also on the Golf News Net Radio YouTube channel, so you can just listen to podcasts on YouTube. You don't have to watch my face or anything like that. Just hear the show. You can also subscribe to the Golf News Net YouTube channel and watch the show and our other shows in full every week. You can also watch the show on Golf News Net TV, which is available on Seam, Free Live Sports, and Freecast, as well as on the Golf News Net app for Amazon Fire and Roku. We'll be back with another show tomorrow. Get a little more in depth in this tournament. We'll have the final show of the week. Talk about the LPGA event down in Mexico. We'll talk about the Korn Ferry Tour playing once again in Knoxville, Tennessee. Talk a little bit about the PGA Tour Champions Major, the Senior PGA Championship, and the Soudal Open on the DP World Tour. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Thank you so much for watching or listening. We will talk to you next time. Good luck with all your bets this week, and we'll talk to you next time.